Hello friends, in this video we will be trying to demonstrate an imaginary landscape. Okay, so I'm planning, I don't have a clear idea, but we'll be making a very vague drawing where we have some sky and some amount of water. So I'm just trying to make clarify some idea. Okay, so maybe some sky and water as I told, and some big tree here maybe. Okay, so I'm just making a very loose and rough sketch here. Okay, so I'm not sure if I will add more trees at the distance and all. Let us see how it develops. Okay, so I think we will not make too much of drawing. This much of drawing should be sufficient, I think, to retain a lot of freedom when I paint. I think we'll stop here and do the washes. I'm looking for some misty kind of overall atmosphere and a little bit of burnt umber and blues and maybe a touch of violet. I'm not sure if I will take. So this, let us see how it goes. So this is a kind of atmospheric sky, maybe a little misty and not very clean in fact. Okay, maybe a little bit more warmer, warmer. To make it warm, I am using burnt umber. Okay, so the paper I am using is Indian handmade paper, and it is very good for this wet on wet watercolors. At the top edge, at the left side, I am making it little bluish, more bluish. I don't know why, but I'm following my instinct, my impulse. Okay. Something at the distance, some white line. Maybe that is around that place is the horizon. Okay. And I'm applying similar wash below the horizon also. I'm trying to make, maybe I'll create some water bodies as well there. Let us see how does it. See, most of my decision will depend upon how the initial washes are getting formed. It's almost the same color. I might leave some area white and I might add some darker tones there later. This the around the horizon I am trying to make a little bit of warmer color in the water as well as in the sky now, because I don't want, I think a little bit of warmer tones at the horizon would be a good idea. Okay. Since it is wet, a lot of things will softly merge and it will become very dull actually when it dries. Okay, when whatever color I am mixing, I wanted to make something dark at the horizon now, above horizon, for example, around the horizon. Okay, so these things are dark now, but very quickly you will find that they will merge softly into the background and they might almost disappear because it is very wet. Okay, so a lot of things we may have to reinstate. I'm not using clean colors today, so it is all merging to the sort of atmosphere that we have created. Some adjacent colors I'm using, something cooler on the left side, maybe some beyond whatever we have suggested on the right side. I'm making it, trying to get some amount of depth with this wet on wet soft washes. No bright colors and some reflection for that. So I haven't yet defined or decided on what will be there below the horizon and how much will be the water body if I'm going to make any piece of land. See, I like to take those decisions as I move. sometimes it works for the good and sometimes it doesn't, but that is the fun. Okay, when things, unpredictable things, you're playing with unpredictable things, you might get surprisingly good or surprisingly bad results, but you enjoy the process. Okay, so some reflection here. So there is a thin white line there, but if you are casually doing applying washes around that area, you should be careful, because it may be very easy. Accidentally, you may mix the upper and lower portions, and it might all merge. Okay, I think that is happening here. Okay, sorry for that sound. I don't have a soundproof mechanism, so some external noise might be coming. It is dry now. Once it is dry, you will find that it has gone very dull. I'm trying. I wanted to do something around the horizon, maybe some warmer green sort of thing, some piece of land. Um, my idea is to get some piece of some piece of land and some piece of water. Uh, I mean, they're intermixedly. I mean, interleaving water and land portions. Just the idea. Let us see how it works. So a narrow piece of water body, then below that there is piece of land, and below that again water. That is the idea. So merging some of this with my hand. So I often merge the things with my fingers. So I get some interesting results by doing that. I'm applying more brush strokes because if I just move my brush and don't touch it on the paper, that means I'm thinking where to touch the brush, what should be the idea. So that is what I'm thinking many times. And maybe some piece of land at the bottom. Yeah, something there. So that there is a big piece of water in the bottom half, and below that there is a small piece of land popping up, and within this some portion of land is, seen through. That means there is some shallow water puddles kind of things there. Here, these are just the ideas that work. This is not based on any reference, but see, when we say there is no reference to this, that doesn't mean that something that we already know may not be. I mean, it is totally from imagination. It may not be totally from imagination. See, you will always recollect some scenes or something that you have seen in the past. So some of the reflections of what is there in my mind might come here. Okay. So since it's a foreground, little darker tones is required, because otherwise we will not get the depth. Some darker accents are those around those puddles of water to make it little more suggestive. And this is a very small scale work, and it is in fact smaller than an A4 size. So you cannot have very precise control with bigger brushes, and I prefer to work with bigger brushes and get the things suggested rather than being precise. A little bit of buckling is also happening on the paper because we have applied a lot of water. Okay. So some piece of land here. I'm trying to define some more clarity around the horizon area. So we have to now think of what is there as the main element. We have initially drawn a tree. Not sure, but since I have made the tree in the drawing, I'm planning to make a big foliage of trees and then make that tree there. Let us see how does it work. These are some maybe tips of the foliages. See, the idea here is we make some foliage tips by making some small touches in the random directions, and then connect with larger volumes, larger shapes. When you make the tips, you use the tip of the brush, and for the larger areas you use the belly of the brush, but that means you keep the brush in a horizontal position. This has to be darker, and I'm not really sure if the tone I am applying now is dark enough. See, I have a very rough drawing underneath about how the branches should go, but I made the drawing very light so that I can ignore that and do a new branch and trunk, etc. So I'm not very sure now. I'm just now playing with the foliages, and I will connect them to the ground with the branches later. And one reason why I do that is some of the washes at the bottom around the land portion is still not dry. If I make the branches now, it will all merge. I wanted the branches or the trunk of the tree should be little contrasting, so I am leaving that for a later point of time. I am trying to work on the foliages. Okay. So when you make trees, you can make either the branches first or the foliage first. I mean, depending upon the situation, I go for either approach. Here I am doing the foliages first, and then branches I may do after some time. And when the branches are done, we may have to again reinstate the foliages to match with the branches. Okay, so a series of corrections basically. I'm trying to make the branch. Now I'm not sure if it will merge or not. It's a darker tone, but the paper is still not very dry at the bottom of the branch where I started the branch at the bottom. It is tending to spread, so I'm stopping the branch there. Some clarity on the bottom edge of that land, so that half of it becomes the object and the bottom half of it becomes the reflection. So some more refinement to those puddles so that they look convincing. I'm not looking for realistic elements. My objective is, I always prefer to get some convincing element by putting some suggestive brush works. I'm not sure. I think I'll make some smaller trees at the distance. Sorry, my hand is blocking my brushworks, but the camera setup is I don't have much flexibility there to move the camera. uh, I don't have any assistant cameraman, so all these things are fixed up. So if for some brushworks my hand may be, I mean, blocking, but these are just suggestive, some suggestive trees, suggestive foliages, some smudging, etc. The smudging is to diffuse the things into background and also to reduce the tonal value, so that they appear that they are in the background. Some trees in the midground. See, mainly I am making those trees. The one purpose of the trees is to visually, I mean, make it little interesting. That will make as a supporting element. And apart from that, I wanted to place the trees there so that the water will become more convincing due to the reflections for these trees. Because for the main tree, we may not get any reflection because that is on the near side of us, and the water body is after the main tree. So I don't get reflection for the main tree, but for these tall 3 trees that I am making, I can mark the reflection so that the water will become more convincing, and even the puddles can be little convincing. Okay, so that is the idea of placing those trees. Okay, usually when we make reflections, it should be we should follow the common rule of physics. It should be something like a mirror reflection. Okay. So now it should be dry now. Let us make some darker tones for the branches now. I don't want the branches to spread, so I have got the paper dried before making the main trunks. Now with these trunks, the trunk when I compare the trunk with the foliages that I have made, the trunk seems to be wider. So ideally, I should, expand the foliages to make it a convincing tree. The bottom of the tree, it should firmly hook to the ground. So all those suggestions required. I wanted some branches to go behind. Okay. Again, my hand is blocking my brushworks, but I think it is very clear. What I am making is very much understood. I'm just trying to connect those foliages with some branches. See, for getting these darker tones, I am often mixing some reds with this olive green. So mainly I am using olive green for this because I am not using any clean greens for this. It is a little brownish green, and I am mixing sometimes red and even some dark blues so that I get some darker tones. And I think I will need a little bit more volume for the foliages. We need little bit expanded foliages to match with the branches. So I am expanding those edge groups. I am using little darker tones than what was there earlier because that is in the foreground. So some mix of darker tones will always help in getting the depth. those some hanging foliages. Uh, there is no specific rule of why I am making all these things. It is just some dynamic decision based on what I feel will be visually appealing. Okay. You might repent later that okay I shouldn't have done this, but I'm just we have to sometimes just to go with our impulses, go with the flow, go with whatever mind says. Okay, I'm taking little narrower brush now and making narrow branches. These are some rigger brushes. With some rigger brushes, I'm using. I'm using some a rigger brush and some darker tones to make some narrow branches. You need to mix. You need to have a mix of wider as well as narrow branches to make it convincing. These are some touches to reinstate some of these uh, the background, midground, background. I didn't touch now. I think uh, in the foreground now I'm making some suggestion. Maybe these are some stones or some piece of rock or something. You may usually find these kind of objects in the foreground. Sometimes I am switching to midground also, so that things are little bit more convincing. You will have to parallelly work on the midground, foreground, background even sometimes, so that everything has a kind of unity. They all work together well. Right, I think what I should do now, maybe some texture to make the foreground little bit, a tiny bit more interesting. Okay. These are all some playing around. You just think and do some playing around. I'm thinking to make some figures. I don't know where. Okay, let us make it here. These are just some suggestions for the figures. We don't need details. I think I need some more things in the foreground, some figures. Not here. Maybe somewhere here. Maybe it is some animal, some goat or something. Again, sorry for the disturbance, the noise around. Okay, maybe a person here. He's not in the focus really. I mean, it is already a dark surrounding. Let us see how we can make it interesting later. But I thought that is the best place to fit a character. Drawing characters in landscapes is again something that you should practice a lot. You should be able to suggest it in a convincing manner. Okay. Thinking of some shadows, whether the shadows will look good. We can't have too much of shadows because there is no much light that is seen. There is little bit of light, but not too much. I think this much of contrast on the shadows may not be a good idea. Let us see. But I am hoping that once it is dry, the contrast will reduce, because watercolor dries duller, as you know. Some more, maybe some suggestions to the figures to make it little bit more convincing. Some touches, I'm not sure whether I should touch. See, once I take a color, I keep thinking, should I use this color anywhere else or not? So whenever I move around the brush and not touch it on the paper, you can assume that I'm just thinking of what I should do. Some highlighting white touches to add to the convincingness, and I mean to make it little bit more convincing, and to make some of these elements pop out a little bit. Okay. So this is white color directly from the tube, and you should use it very sparingly. It should not be used extensively. You should use it with caution. Very tiny bit, just touch in a very controlled manner. But this will give a lot of interest if applied wisely. Okay, now, yeah, I think it is more. Smudge it. Okay, all right. I think we are pretty much done. We are just getting closer to the finishing point. So, see, we can keep adding, but at some point we should stop. I think we have got something that is convincing enough, and we can now stop and take out the tape. So we have a crisp border now, and I think it is come out well. Those figures are looking convincing. Okay, and it is pretty okay. I think this reflection for the figures were not there. So some of the things you notice only once you really sign it, and this one I clipped the signing portion because signing portion is not important for you to see. Right, so, reflection for those bodies, people, and I think it is okay. We are done. So this is the final work. It looks convincing, and it's imaginary. The tree could be better, but I think it's okay. It is convincing. So I think we are done. I think thanks for watching, and we will see you in the next lesson. Okay, thank you very much.